When my sister died, we buried her in the family plot behind our old farmhouse. 3 days later, she came home. She didn't knock. She didn't say a word. She just stood in the kitchen, wet and pale, her dress still covered in dirt. My parents acted like nothing was wrong. They set a plate for her, asked how her day was. I screamed. I begged them to see, but they just smiled. Isn't it nice to have her back? I ran upstairs and locked the door. Through the keyhole, I saw her standing in the hallway, smiling, waiting. The next morning, the door was open, and on my bed was a note, written in her handwriting. You're next. Next story, I found a USB drive on my windshield when I left the grocery store. No label, just a black stick, barely used. Curiosity 1, I plugged it into my laptop. One file, a video. It showed the back of my head. I was standing in line, buying milk and bread. Just minutes earlier, the footage was shaky, like from a phone camera. Someone had been recording me. I clicked ahead in the timeline. There I was again, driving home. Then walking into my apartment. Then sitting at my desk. Live feed. The final frame was me, sitting at my desk, watching the video. Then the screen went black, and the webcam light turned on. Next story. My grandfather had a shed in the backyard. He always kept locked. Old tools, he said. Nothing for you in there. After he passed, we had to clean out the house. I found the key in a coffee can. The shed creaked open like it hadn't been touched in decades. Inside were hundreds of Polaroids. Each one showed a person sleeping. Different people, different beds. All of them shot from the same angle, above the bed, looking down. At the bottom of each photo, a date and a name. Some were recent. One was mine. Last Tuesday. I hadn't told anyone I'd started sleeping alone again. And that night, I slept with the lights on. Next story, I used to get sleep paralysis often. Always the same thing. A dark figure standing at the foot of my bed, whispering something I couldn't hear. I learned to fight it, to wake myself up. But last week, it changed. The figure got closer, leaning down near my face. I still couldn't move, couldn't scream. He whispered again, only this time I heard it. You're not dreaming anymore. When I woke up, I was standing in the hallway, door open, feet dirty, mouth dry, and on the wall, scratched deep into the paint, were the words, "We switched. Super. Рад, что нравится. Вот еще 4 длинные истории. Каждая начинается с next story. Как и раньше. Next story." When I moved into the old apartment downtown, the landlord warned me about the noise from the pipes. They rattle, he said. Old building. Don't worry if you hear tapping at night. He was right. Every night around 3 a.m., I'd hear rhythmic tapping coming from inside the walls. Tap, 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 like Morse code. But one night, the tapping stopped. Instead, I heard scratching. Slow, deliberate. Then a whisper. Can you hear me now? I froze. The whisper came again, closer. I know you can. I pushed my bed away from the wall and pressed my ear to the plaster. Behind it, something whispered louder. I'm almost through. I moved out the next day. 2 weeks later, the building was condemned. They found a bricked-up room behind my bedroom wall with claw marks on the inside. Next story. My daughter came home from school with a drawing. She said it was her invisible friend named Oliver. I smiled and hung it on the fridge. Just a stick figure in a black hoodie. Every day, a new drawing. Oliver at the playground. Oliver in her classroom. Oliver standing by her bed. Then one morning, I woke up to a drawing pinned to my pillow. It showed me sleeping. Oliver standing beside me, eyes red, smiling. I rushed to my daughter's room. She was gone. The window was open, and the last drawing was taped to the glass. It showed the two of them walking into the woods, hand in hand. Next story, my roommate started talking in his sleep. At first, it was gibberish, mumbles, twitching. Then it became clearer. Names, dates, places. One night, I heard him say my name. Then, "He knows. Get rid of him." I thought it was a bad dream. Until the next morning, when I found a note on the fridge, "Don't go to sleep tonight." I confronted him. He laughed it off, said I must have dreamed it. But that night, I pretended to sleep. Around 2 a.m., I heard him get up, bare feet across the floor. I cracked one eye open. He was standing over me, holding a knife, whispering, "You should have listened." When I moved into my apartment, the landlord said, "If you ever hear knocking from the pipes, don't knock back." I laughed it off, thought it was some weird local superstition. But one night, I heard it. 3 knocks, from inside the bathroom wall. Out of curiosity, I knocked back 3 times. Nothing. The next night, 4 knocks, then 5, then 6. Now it happens every night. Louder, closer. And last night, I didn't knock at all, but something inside the wall did, just once, followed by a whisper, "Why'd you stop?" Next story. When I was in college, I worked nights at a gas station in a rural area. It was mostly quiet, until one night, a man came in, dirty, barefoot, wide-eyed. He looked terrified. "I need to use your phone," he said. "It's coming." I handed it to him. He dialed, but no one picked up. Then he dropped the phone and whispered, "Too late." He ran outside and disappeared into the woods. I called the police. They searched, found no trace. But for the next week, every night, at exactly 3:12 a.m., my station's lights flickered, and something walked past the windows, always just out of view. One night, I stayed hidden behind the counter. The power cut out, and I heard breathing right next to me. When the lights came back, nothing was there, but muddy barefoot prints across the floor. Next story, I volunteered at a crisis hotline for years. One night, I got a call from a whispering voice. "She's in the house," they said. I asked for the address. The caller kept repeating, "She's in the house. She's behind the curtain. She's..." Then silence. I called emergency services, gave them the number, the transcript. They tracked it. The call came from inside our own building, from one of the unused staff rooms. I went there with security. There was no one, just an old phone, unplugged, disconnected from the wall, still warm to the touch. Next story, I used to babysit for a family with a baby monitor, the kind with a camera and a screen. One night, I was watching a movie. When I glanced at the screen, the baby wasn't alone. A figure stood in the corner of the nursery, tall, thin, unmoving. I ran upstairs. The room was empty, door locked from the inside. I checked the camera feed again, just the baby now. But the figure started showing up more often, sometimes closer, sometimes waving. I stopped babysitting. But a week later, the parents called me, terrified. The baby kept pointing to the corner and saying, "That man." There was no one there. At least, not anymore. Next story. A couple years ago, my grandma passed away. She lived alone in a big, creaky house. After her funeral, I stayed overnight to help clean. At 2 a.m., I heard footsteps upstairs, but no one else was there. I went up. Her bedroom door was closed. It opened slowly as I approached. On the bed was her old music box, playing by itself, and beside it, a photo of me as a child, but the face was scratched out. I threw the photo away. Next morning, it was back on the nightstand. The scratch marks were deeper. That night, I didn't sleep, and neither did she. I heard the music box again, and a voice whisper my name. Next story, I was 8, when I got my first imaginary friend. Her name was Eliza. She wore old-fashioned clothes, and always wanted to play hide-and-seek. My parents thought it was cute, until I started talking about things I shouldn't have known, like the locked door in the attic, or the names of relatives who had died before I was born. I told them Eliza showed me a photograph. They found one in the attic weeks later, faded and crumpled. It showed a girl standing outside the house, same dress I described. On the back, Eliza, 1893. After that, My parents got rid of everything in the attic, but I still saw her at night. Sometimes she whispered secrets in my ear. Sometimes she just stared. When we moved, I thought it would stop, but she came too. I was 25 when I found a box in my new home's basement. Inside, Eliza's photograph, still smiling. Next story. When I was in high school, I had a friend named Brian. Quiet kid, obsessed with drawing. But all he ever drew were houses. The same house again and again. Windows in the wrong places. Hallways that looped forever. Stairs that ended in brick walls. We asked why. He said, because I see it when I sleep, and sometimes when I'm awake. One day, Brian stopped showing up. We were told he moved away suddenly. A year later, I found a drawing in my locker. It was the house. But this time, there were people in the windows. Their faces looked like ours. And one of them looked terrified, with Brian's name scratched underneath. I never saw him again, but sometimes, when I'm half asleep, I see the hallway he described, and I think I hear him calling for help. There's a house at the end of our street that nobody lives in. It's not abandoned. The grass stays trimmed. The porch light turns on at night. The windows are always clean, but no one ever sees anyone go in or out. The neighborhood kids dare each other to knock on the door. One Halloween, we worked up the courage. 5 of us, laughing too loud to hide how scared we were. We dared Tyler to do it. He walked up the steps, knocked 3 times. The door opened. Just a crack. No one visible. He leaned closer, said something stupid like, "Trick or treat." The door swung open wider. We all stood there waiting. Then Tyler stepped inside. We heard a slam, ran up the steps, banged on the door, yelled his name. Nothing. When we finally got the guts to go in, the house was empty, dusty, cold, the furniture covered in sheets, the lights flickering even though the bulbs were new. We searched for hours. No Tyler. Then we heard it. Footsteps upstairs. Heavy. Slow. We ran. Tyler's parents called the cops. The search lasted weeks. Flyers everywhere. No clues. No leads. A month later, his voice started coming from the house. Crying. Pleading. Screaming. Some nights, I still hear it. Always after midnight. I'll walk by and see a shape in the window. Pressed against the glass. Watching. Waiting. Next story, I used to work at a call center. Boring job. Same script over and over. Half the time, people just hung up. One night, during the late shift, my headset buzzed. Static, then a voice. Software. Childlike. Help me. I checked the caller ID. Blank. No number. Not even unknown. Just an empty space. I asked who it was. No answer. Just breathing. I flagged my supervisor. He shrugged it off. Said prank calls happen. But it kept happening. Every night around 2 a.m. The same call. Same voice. Same 2 words. Help me. I started hearing the voice, even when the phones weren't ringing. In the bathroom. In the break room. In my car on the way home. I started losing sleep. Stopped answering my phone altogether. One night, I stayed late to finish paperwork. The lights flickered. The computer screen glitched. And then, across every monitor in the office, a single sentence appeared. "Why didn't you help me?" I ran. Quit the next day. But the calls didn't stop. I smashed my phone. Got a new number. Changed cities. Last week, my new phone rang at 2 a.m. No caller ID. Just static. And then the whisper. "You found me." Next story. When I was a kid, my grandfather warned me about the mirror hours. Times when the clock shows the same numbers, forward and backward. 11:11, 12:21, 3:30. He said if you stare into a mirror during one of those times, sometimes you don't see yourself. You see something pretending to be you. And if you don't look away fast enough, it switches places. I thought it was an old man's nonsense. Until last Thursday. I stayed late at work, finished up at exactly 11:11 p.m. In the bathroom, Washing my hands, I glanced at the mirror. At first, everything looked normal. Then my reflection blinked. But I didn't. I froze. The reflection smiled, wider than should be possible. Then it reached forward. I turned and ran. As I slammed the bathroom door, I heard the mirror crack. I don't know if I made it out fast enough, because sometimes, when I catch my reflection in windows or screens, it's not quite right. It moves slower, smiles longer, and every day it looks a little less like me and a little more like something else. Отлично. Сразу продолжаю без пауз. Вот следующие 3 истории в 11 Labs формате, без финальных фраз и без лишнего оформления. Next story. There's an old motel on the outskirts of town. No signs, no advertisements, just a flickering vacancy light that never turns off. Nobody sane stays there. But after my car broke down during a storm, I didn't have a choice. The lobby was empty. Bell on the counter. Dust everywhere. A key already waiting with my room number, 108, tied to it with string. The hallway smelled like mildew and something worse. Sweet. Rotten. My room was small. 1 bed, 1 cracked mirror, a window that wouldn't open. I was too tired to care. Threw my bag down and passed out. At 3:11 a.m., I woke up to scratching. Soft at first, then frantic, coming from inside the closet. I called the front desk. No answer. The scratching got louder. I crept to the closet door, pressed my ear against it, breathing, shallow, wet. I flung it open, empty. But when I turned around, the reflection in the cracked mirror showed the closet still shut, and something pushing against it from the inside. I left everything behind and ran. When I looked back from the parking lot, the lights were off. The vacancy sign was dark. The motel wasn't there anymore. Just an empty lot. Next story, I deliver pizzas on the weekends. Most of the time, it's boring. Same neighborhoods, same bad tips. But last Saturday night, I got an order from the edge of town, a place called Hollow Creek Road. No street lights, no houses I could see. Just trees swallowing the road on both sides. The GPS led me to a small, crumbling house. No cars outside, no porch light. The door was already open. I should have left. But I needed the tip. I knocked. No answer. I stepped inside. The house was cold, dark, smelled like dirt and something sour. On the floor, right inside the doorway, was a small table, and on it, exact change for the pizza, and a note. Thank you for feeding me. I turned to leave. Then I heard breathing behind me. Deep, wet, guttural. I dropped the pizza and ran. When I reached my car, I looked back. Something stood in the doorway. Too tall, too thin. Its head brushing the top of the frame. It waved. Not a friendly wave. More like a promise. I don't deliver past the highway anymore. And when I drive at night, I keep the windows rolled up. Because sometimes, if you listen closely, you can hear heavy breathing just outside the glass. Next story. There's a cemetery near my apartment. Old, overgrown. Half the headstones too worn to read. Every night on my walk home, I pass it. And every night, I feel like I'm being watched. One evening, curiosity got the better of me. I stepped inside. The gate creaked shut behind me. The air was heavy, thicker than it should have been. The hairs on my arms stood up. I walked between the graves, reading the names. Most were from the 1800s. Then I found a new one. Fresh dirt, no name, just a blank headstone. That's when I heard it, whispering, all around me, the names of the dead, chanted in a low, steady hum. I turned to leave, but the gate was gone, just a wall of thick fog where it had been. And in that fog, shapes moved, slow, shuffling, crawling toward me. I ran, heart pounding. No matter where I turned, the graves stretched on endlessly, and the whispering got louder. Then, from the fog, a hand grabbed my ankle, cold, bone-thin. I kicked free and ran blind. When I stumbled out into the street, gasping, the cemetery was behind me again. Silent, Still, but now, every time I pass it, there's a new grave, and the headstone isn't blank anymore. It has my name. Отлично. Продолжаю сразу еще 3 истории. Все по правилам. 11 Labs формат. Без финальных фраз. Каждая начинается с Next Story. Next story. When I was a kid, my dad warned me about the man in the drain. Said if you stayed in the bathroom too long after midnight, you might hear him whispering from the sink. I thought he was just trying to scare me. Until the night I stayed up late, playing video games, and forgot the time. It was 12:37 a.m. when I went to brush my teeth. The bathroom felt wrong the moment I stepped inside. Colder. Heavy. As I leaned over the sink, I heard it. A whisper. My name. I froze. The water in the drain rippled even though the faucet was off. I backed away. Something started crawling out. A hand. Pale. Wet. Fingers too long. Nails broken and black. I slammed the bathroom door and ran. The next morning, everything looked normal, but the mirror had fogged over, even though the bathroom hadn't been used. And scrawled into the fog, 4 words. See you next time. I never stay in the bathroom after midnight now. But sometimes, when I pass by, I hear faint tapping from the pipes, getting louder. Next story. Last summer, I volunteered at a local history museum. Mostly boring stuff, giving tours, setting up exhibits, until we opened the Victorian wing. It was full of old clothes, cracked dolls, broken furniture, and the mirror, an enormous ornate thing, gold frame, spiderweb cracks in the glass. We were told never to touch it. One night, closing up, I passed by the mirror, and I saw someone standing behind me, tall, dressed in black, face hidden by a veil. I turned, no one there. When I looked back at the mirror, the cracks had shifted. They formed a word. Stay. I laughed it off. Maybe a trick of the light. The next day, a co-worker went missing, vanished during her shift. Security footage showed her walking past the mirror, and then gone. No one saw her leave. Later that week, another volunteer disappeared. Same pattern. By the time we closed the exhibit, 3 people were missing. When they moved the mirror to storage, workers found handprints from the inside. I quit the museum after that. But sometimes, in shop windows or puddles, I catch glimpses of someone behind me, waiting. My brother went missing 5 years ago. He was obsessed with urban exploration, old hospitals, sewers, abandoned factories, always chasing the next thrill. His last known location was the Carter building downtown. Condemned, supposedly empty. I went in after him. Flashlight, camera, stupid bravery. The place was a maze of collapsed ceilings and flooded hallways. But in the basement, I found something strange. The walls were covered in handprints, tiny ones, child-sized. They led to a door, heavy steel, bolted from the outside, something scratched from the inside. I called out, "Evan." Silence. Then a whisper, "Help me." I unbolted the door and opened it. Darkness deeper than night stared back at me. I should have run, but I stepped inside. The door slammed shut. Total blackness. Only my flashlight beam, weak and flickering. And then, movement. A dozen figures crawling on the floor, limbs too long, faces stretched in permanent screams. I ran, crashing through them, somehow finding another exit. I never found my brother. But sometimes, late at night, I hear knocking at my apartment door. 3 soft knocks. When I look through the peephole, I see him, smiling. But his eyes aren't right anymore. Next story. There's a town that doesn't exist on any map. Locals call it Hollow Point. You only find it when you're already lost. Late at night, driving unfamiliar roads, radio static buzzing. That's how I found it. I don't even remember turning onto that road. 1 minute, I was heading home. The next, I was under a rusted sign that said, "Welcome to Hollow Point." The town was frozen in time. 1950s storefronts, empty streets, a diner with a neon sign flickering weakly, but it wasn't abandoned. People walked the sidewalks, dressed in old clothes, faces blank, smiling too wide. I pulled over, tried to ask for directions. They ignored me, until one of them, a boy, no older than 10, looked straight at me and whispered, "You're not supposed to be here." I got back in my car, tried to drive away. Every street led back to the same diner. No matter where I turned, there it was. And the people started getting closer, walking toward my car, smiling. I drove straight through someone, or tried to. The car passed right through him. He didn't even blink, just smiled wider. I finally found a road out, a cracked, overgrown path into the woods. I didn't stop until sunrise. Now, every time I drive at night, I check the signs carefully, because sometimes, even now, I see glimpses of Hollow Point in my rearview mirror, and every time, the faces are closer. Next story. When I was 12, my cousin dared me to explore the woods behind our grandparents' house. They called it the Crooked Forest. Trees grew at strange angles, twisting toward the sky like they were reaching for something. Nobody went there after dark. Of course, we picked the dumbest time, sunset. We found a path almost immediately. Narrow, overgrown, barely wide enough for us to walk side by side. About half an hour in, we found the well. It sat in a clearing, crumbling with age, half swallowed by vines. No bucket, no rope, just darkness yawning beneath. We dared each other to look inside. I leaned over first. Something was looking back. Not a reflection, not an animal, a face, pale, eyeless, smiling too wide. I stumbled back, told my cousin. He thought I was messing with him, until the voice called his name, not mine, his, soft and sweet. From deep below, he leaned over, and something grabbed him, pulled him half into the well before I caught his arm. He screamed. I screamed. Whatever had him was strong. I saw long gray fingers wrapping around his ankle. I yanked with everything I had. We ran. Neither of us talked about it again. But sometimes, when I dream, I see that well, and something crawling out of it. Slowly, patiently. Next story. The apartment above mine has been vacant for 6 months, but every night at 1:06 a.m., I hear footsteps pacing back and forth, slow, steady, never stopping. I told the landlord. He said I was the third tenant to complain, and the first 2 moved out within a week. Last night, I went upstairs. The hallway was dark. The air, still, cold. I knocked on the door of 4B. No answer. As I turned to leave, I heard a whisper directly behind me. "Don't knock. It doesn't like being interrupted." There was no one there, and now I hear footsteps inside my apartment too. Next story, I work at a morgue on the night shift. Mostly quiet. Just the dead. One night, the alarm on drawer number 6 started going off. Motion detected. The body inside was a John Doe, found days earlier. I opened it. He was smiling, and clutched in his hand was a Polaroid of me, sleeping. I never liked my great-uncle's house. It smelled of mothballs and cold stone, and the hallways were too narrow, the ceilings too low, like the whole place had been built to trap you. After he passed, the family gathered to clear it out. I got stuck with the basement. It was worse than I remembered. Damp, dark. The light bulb above the stairs flickered constantly, casting more shadows than light. As I started hauling out old trunks and broken furniture, I noticed something odd. A door set into the far wall, half hidden behind a shelf. A door I didn't remember ever seeing before. It was small, barely high enough for a child to pass through. The doorknob was icy cold. Curiosity won. I pulled the shelf aside and opened the door. Behind it was a narrow tunnel, carved straight into the stone foundation. Dirt and rock walls pressed in on both sides. The air that poured out smelled ancient, like the inside of a grave. I should have closed the door and left, but something moved in the darkness ahead. A shuffling sound, like bare feet dragging over stone, and a whisper, my name. It didn't sound like my great-uncle. It sounded like a child, desperate and broken. I took a step inside. The tunnel sloped downward, deeper and deeper. The further I went, the colder it got, until I could see my breath in front of me. The walls narrowed until I had to squeeze through sideways. Finally, the tunnel opened into a small stone room. In the center was a mirror, cracked, blackened, covered in something that looked like soot. And in the mirror, I saw them. Children, dozens of them, pressed against the glass from the other side. Their faces pale and hollow-eyed, mouths open in silent screams. One hand pressed flat against the surface from their side. Then another, and another. I stumbled back. The whispers grew louder, begging, crying, screaming. I ran, scrambling up the tunnel, feeling icy fingers brushing at my ankles, grabbing at my clothes. I slammed the basement door shut behind me. We sold the house a month later. But sometimes, when I pass old buildings, I feel something tugging at my coat. And faintly, I hear my name whispered from the cracks in the stone. Next story. When my grandfather died, we inherited his farmhouse. It was a crumbling wreck, far from the nearest town, surrounded by fields that hadn't been tended in decades. My parents saw it as a project. I saw it as a nightmare. The first night we stayed there, the house breathed. Not the usual creaks and groans of old wood. No, it inhaled. Long, slow pulls of air that made the curtains sway and the dust stir. I convinced myself it was wind through broken walls, until the breathing started matching mine. Inhale when I inhaled, exhale when I exhaled, but a half second off, as if something was mimicking me. It got worse. Doors closed by themselves. Footsteps echoed behind me when I knew I was alone. My reflection in the bathroom mirror would smile even when I wasn't. One night, lying in bed, I heard it, a soft voice, under the floorboards, repeating one word over and over. Hungry. I stayed frozen until dawn. The next day, I found scratch marks under my bed, deep gouges, like something had been clawing its way up from beneath. I begged my parents to leave. They didn't listen. A week later, Dad vanished. Simply gone. No sign of struggle, no broken locks, no tracks, just gone. We finally left after that. Sold the house to some city people who thought it was charming. Last I heard, they disappeared too. And sometimes, late at night, when the wind is just right, I swear, I hear breathing under my bed again. Waiting. Next story. When I was younger, there was a phone booth at the edge of the park no one used. Old, rusted, cracked glass panels. It didn't even have a phone inside anymore. Just the dangling cord. But everyone said if you stood inside at midnight and picked up the cord, you'd hear a voice. Not from this world. One summer night, after too much soda and dares flying around, I tried it. 11:59 p.m., standing in the booth, staring at the stars through the broken roof. When the clock struck 12, I grabbed the cord. At first, nothing. Then, a click, and breathing. Wet, labored. A whisper crackled through the cord. You're next. I dropped it and ran. My friends laughed, called me a coward. The next night, one of them tried. Same thing. Except he didn't come out. We found the booth empty, but the cord was swinging. And faintly, if you pressed your ear to it, you could hear him screaming. By the end of that summer, 3 kids had vanished. The booth was torn down, but sometimes, on foggy nights, I swear I see it standing there again, waiting, the cord dangling, swinging. There's a radio station that only broadcasts after midnight. No call letters, no DJs, just static punctuated by strange broken songs. Locals call it dead air. I found it by accident, spinning the dial during a sleepless night. The song was old, warped. A woman's voice singing about lost love and open graves. I listened. I shouldn't have. The music stopped, replaced by a voice. not singing anymore. It spoke my name, software, Corful, as if testing it. I stared at the radio. The voice whispered my address, my birthday, things no one should know. I ripped the plug from the wall. The static kept playing, growing louder, filling the house like a living thing. I smashed the radio to pieces. Silence. But that night, my phone buzzed. A notification from an unknown number, a recording of that same warped song. Now, no matter where I go, no matter what device I use, the station finds me. And every night, the voice gets clearer, closer, promising I'll be part of the broadcast soon. Next story. When the new subway line opened downtown, everyone was excited. New stations, faster commutes. The city felt alive again, until people started disappearing. Always late trains, always empty cars. I didn't believe the rumors, until the night I missed my usual ride and caught the last train. At first, it was normal. Fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, graffiti-covered seats. Then I noticed it. The windows didn't reflect right. Outside was just black. No tunnels, no lights, just endless, swallowing dark. Then the announcements started. Not station names, whispers, my name, over and over. The lights flickered. Passengers I hadn't noticed before stared at me. Their faces were wrong, blurred, twisted. They smiled, mouths stretching too wide. I bolted to the next car. Same thing, no escape. The train just kept going, faster, faster, until everything outside blurred into grey. Finally, the doors opened, not to a platform, to a massive gaping mouth, lined with teeth the size of buildings. I jumped, hit the tracks hard. When I scrambled up, the train was gone. And for a moment in the distance, I thought I heard my own voice, whispering from the dark, calling someone else's name. Next story. My apartment has an extra door. It's not on the blueprint, not mentioned in the lease. Just a small, plain door in the hallway with no handle on the outside. The first time I noticed it, I assumed it led to an old maintenance closet. Tried to open it, but it wouldn't budge. Forgot about it for a while, until the knocking started, always at 3:09 a.m. 3 knocks, then silence. It never came from the front door, always from the extra one. I asked the landlord. He said I was imagining things. So, one night, I stayed up, watching the door. At exactly 3:09, it knocked. Then, the handle slowly began turning, from the inside, but the door stayed shut. I moved out the next day. Months later, I ran into a guy who now lived in the same unit. I asked him if he'd seen anything strange. He laughed, said there was no extra door. I asked if he was sure. He stopped smiling. Actually, he said, I covered it with a bookshelf. Seemed better that way. Then he leaned in and whispered, "It still knocks though." I haven't spoken to him since, but last week I woke up at 3:09 and there was a knock at my bedroom wall. 3 knocks, coming from inside the wall. Next story. The new girl at work didn't talk much. She was quiet, polite, always wore the same black dress. No one remembered interviewing her. HR didn't have her file, but she had a desk, an email, and a nameplate. We all just accepted it. Then weird things started happening. People got nosebleeds when they passed her desk. One guy fainted after making eye contact with her for too long. Said he saw her face flicker, like an image glitching on a screen. Another swore he saw her walking outside the building after hours, even though he'd just seen her sitting at her desk. He quit the next day. I tried not to look at her, but one afternoon, I dropped a file near her desk and glanced up. She was staring at me, not blinking. Her eyes were too black, too wide, like empty sockets with something behind them. She smiled, but only with her mouth. That night, I got an email from her. No subject, no message, just an attachment, a video. I opened it. It was footage of me, sleeping, from inside my bedroom. I don't sleep much anymore. She still comes to work, still in the same black dress, still staring. I never learned her name, but sometimes, when the office is quiet, I hear typing at her desk. even when she isn't there.